The great council chamber stretched across 3 kilometers of polished crystal, its walls reaching toward a dome that showed the swirling colors of deep space. Representatives from across the galaxy sat in their designated sections, each species maintaining the careful distances that centuries of diplomacy had established. Ambassador Q-Min of the Vex-High hegemony rose from his crystalline seat, his translucent body catching the light from the chamber's center where a massive holographic star map rotated slowly. The map showed the current state of galactic civilization, vast territories marked in different colors representing the 3 great powers that had divided known space between them. Blue sectors belonged to the Vex-High, a race of living crystal, beings who had mastered energy manipulation over millennia. Their empire sprawled across the galaxy's eastern spiral arm, encompassing thousands of worlds, rich in the rare minerals their species required for reproduction. Green marked the domains of the Thrak Collective, insectoid warriors whose hive-minded society had conquered the southern regions through relentless expansion. Their breeding rates were legendary, as was their ability to adapt quickly to new environments and technologies. The golden territories of the Luminary Federation dominated the western reaches, where beings of pure energy had established the most technologically advanced civilization in recorded history. They viewed other species much like humans might view interesting bacteria, worthy of study but not consideration as equals. But there, nestled between all 3 empires like a small, white island in a sea of color, sat a modest cluster of 50 star systems that none of the great powers claimed. The label floating above this territory read simply, Human Space, Restricted Access. Q-Min gestured toward this anomaly with one crystalline appendage. Fellow council members, his voice resonated through the chamber's translation systems, I must raise a question that has troubled many of our younger citizens. Why does this minor species command such unusual respect? Murmurs rippled through the assembly. In the Thrak section, younger warriors clicked their mandibles in agreement. Fresh luminary delegates pulsed with curious energy patterns. The question that had been whispered in back channels for decades was finally being asked openly. 50 star systems, Q-Min continued, his form brightening with conviction. 3 billion inhabitants, no significant military presence visible on our long-range scans. No expansion beyond their original borders in over 2 centuries, yet our star charts mark their territory as absolutely forbidden to cross. Elder War Commander Thalak of the Thrak Collective shifted uncomfortably in his bio-formed chair. His scarred carapace bore the marks of countless battles, but something about this discussion made his antennae twitch with anxiety. Some boundaries exist for good reason, Ambassador. What reason? Pressed luminary Sora of the Federation, her energy form flickering between colors that indicated skepticism. Our databases contain no records of significant human military capability. Their technology appears primitive compared to our own. Their population is tiny by galactic standards. The elder delegates exchanged glances that spoke of shared knowledge none wanted to voice. In the Vex-High section, ancient speaker Tai Sung's crystalline form had dimmed noticeably. Among the Thrak, several old warriors had gone completely still, a sign of deep unease in their species. The luminary elders had retreated to wavelengths barely visible to most organic eyes. Perhaps, suggested Junior Ambassador Ji-Hoon of the Vex-High, it is time to renegotiate these ancient agreements. Our empires have grown stronger. Our technology has advanced. What threat could such a small population possibly pose in the current era? This suggestion sent visible shockwaves through the elder ranks. Ancient speaker Tae-Sung suddenly blazed with alarm, his crystalline body resonating with harmonics that made nearby delegates step back. You speak of matters beyond your understanding, youngling. But the damage was done. Across the chamber, younger delegates began nodding agreement. They had been raised in an era of imperial dominance, where the 3 great powers carved up territory and resources with casual efficiency. The idea that their mighty empires should show deference to a handful of primitive mammals struck them as absurd. War Princess Hyun-Ju of the Thrak Collective rose to her full height, her newly grown battle spikes gleaming under the chamber's lights. I have reviewed the restricted files my hive mothers guard so carefully. They speak of events from centuries past, of agreements made in a different time. Perhaps it is indeed time to test whether these humans still deserve their protected status. The chamber erupted in debate. Younger voices called for investigation, for contact, for the kind of diplomatic pressure that had brought dozens of species into imperial fold. Elder delegates tried desperately to maintain order, their warnings drowned out by the enthusiasm of a generation that had never seen their empires truly challenged. In the chaos, few noticed when the star map flickered briefly. For just a moment, additional markers appeared around human space. Thousands of tiny dots that registered no energy signatures, cast no shadows, reflected no light. Then the display returned to normal, showing only empty space around the modest white sphere of human territory. The council session ended with no formal resolution, but the damage was already done. In private chambers and secure communications, younger imperial leaders began making plans. They would approach these humans with overwhelming force, expecting either swift surrender or profitable negotiation. None of them had ever seen humans fight. None of them understood what their elders were so afraid of. They would learn soon enough. War Princess Hyunju stood on the command bridge of her flagship, watching the stars shift to normal space as her fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel. 12 of the Thrak Collective's finest warships had followed her across the galaxy. To this moment, each vessel bristled with weapons that could crack planets and shields that had never been penetrated in battle. The young commander had risen through the ranks faster than any Thrak in recent memory. Her tactical brilliance had crushed 3 rebellions in the outer colonies. Her warriors followed her with absolute loyalty. She had never lost a battle, never retreated from a fight, never shown mercy to enemies of the collective. Sensor report, she clicked in the harsh Thrak battle tongue. 12 human systems detected ahead, War Princess, replied her communications officer. No military vessels visible on long-range scans. The nearest inhabited world shows primitive, industrial signatures only. Hyunju's mandibles curved in what other species might recognize as a smile. The intelligence reports had been accurate. These humans had grown soft during their centuries of isolation. Whatever ancient conflict had earned them their protected status was clearly forgotten history. Signal the fleet, she ordered. Battle formation. We will show these mammals what happens when empires decide to expand. The Thrak warships moved into their traditional attack pattern, a formation that had terrified civilizations across the galaxy. Each ship was a kilometer long, armored with biosteel that could self-repair minor damage and bristling with plasma cannons capable of glassing entire continents. As they crossed the invisible boundary into human space, Hyunju felt the thrill of conquest flowing through her. The elders back home would praise her initiative once she returned with a new territory for the collective. The humans would either surrender quickly or be crushed just as quickly. War Princess, her sensor officer's voice carried a note of confusion. I am detecting movement. Explain. Unknown contacts appearing on all sides of our formation. They were not there 5 seconds ago. Hyunju moved to the sensor station and studied the readings herself. 12 new signatures had appeared around her fleet, perfectly positioned to surround them. But that was impossible. Nothing could move that fast, or hide that completely. Visual confirmation, she demanded. The main display shifted to show space around the fleet. At first, nothing seemed different. Then the stars began to shimmer, and shapes became visible against the darkness. Human ships materialized as if stepping out of another dimension entirely. They were unlike anything in the galactic databases. Where Thrak vessels were brutal and angular, these ships flowed like living things. Their hulls seemed to bend light around them, making it difficult to focus on their exact shape or size. No weapons were visible, no obvious armor plating, yet something about their presence made Hyunju's warriors shift nervously at their stations. Incoming transmission, reported the communications officer. They are speaking perfect Thrak. Put it through. A calm voice filled the bridge, speaking their language with native fluency. Thrak vessels, this is Captain Park Min-ho of the Terran. Federation Navy. You have entered sovereign human space without authorization. By the terms of the Galactic Accords, you have exactly 1 minute to withdraw beyond our borders, or we will consider this an act of war against humanity. Hyunju's crest flared with anger. No species had dared speak to the Thrak Collective with such casual authority in over a century. Human vessel, I am War Princess Hyunju of the Thrak Collective. You will surrender immediately or face the consequences of opposing our fleet. There was a pause. When the human captain spoke again, his tone remained perfectly polite. War Princess, I believe there has been a misunderstanding. You have 45 seconds to begin your withdrawal. You dare threaten us? Hyunju's voice rose to a battle shriek that echoed through the bridge. Weapons systems online. Target. Their lead vessel. Her weapons officer hesitated. War Princess, our targeting systems cannot lock onto their ships. The sensors report multiple contacts in the same position, as if they exist in several places at once. Then fire at all positions. 30 seconds, came the calm human voice. Hyunju watched her fleet's most advanced weapon systems struggle to make sense of what they were seeing. The human ships seemed to phase in and out of reality, their exact positions impossible to determine. Her tactical displays showed error messages she had never seen before. 20 seconds. Manual targeting, she screamed. Fire everything! The Thrak fleet opened fire with enough concentrated firepower to destroy a moon. Plasma beams and kinetic projectiles filled the space where the human ships had been. The energy discharge lit up nearby space like a small star. When the light faded, the human vessels remained exactly where they had been. Not damaged, not moved, apparently completely unaffected by weapons that could crack continents. 10 seconds. Hyunju stared at her tactical display in growing horror. Every weapon her fleet possessed had fired simultaneously at point-blank range. The humans had not even bothered to dodge. 5 seconds. Withdraw, she shouted, but her words were lost as every system on every Thrak ship suddenly went dark. The last thing War Princess Hyunju saw before her bridge lights failed was space itself seeming to bend around her fleet, reality twisting in ways that made her eyes water. Then darkness claimed her, and she knew with terrible certainty that she had made the worst mistake of her life. War Princess Hyunju's eyes opened slowly, her head pounding with pain she had never experienced before. The familiar biosteel walls of her flagship were gone, replaced by surfaces that seemed to shift and flow like liquid metal. The air tasted different, cleaner somehow without the familiar scent markers that told a Thrak warrior she was in friendly territory. She tried to move and found herself sitting in what appeared to be a chair, though it had molded itself perfectly to her insectoid form. Her weapon harnesses were gone, but she felt no restraints. When she attempted to stand, the chair simply dissolved back into the floor, allowing her complete freedom of movement. Please do not be alarmed, War Princess, came a voice from behind her. You are safe aboard the TFS Busan. Hyunju spun around, her battle reflexes bringing her claws to ready position. Standing a few meters away was a human male, smaller than she had expected from the intelligence reports. He wore a simple uniform of dark blue fabric with minimal decoration. Nothing like the elaborate armor and weapons that marked status among the Thrak. I am Captain Lee Dong-min, the human said, showing no fear of her threatening posture. I apologize for the rough transition, but your fleet ignored our warnings. Where are my ships? She demanded, her voice carrying the harsh undertones that had made enemy warriors flee in terror. Where are my crew? Your vessels are intact, and your warriors are unharmed, Captain Lee replied calmly. They are currently experiencing the same hospitality you are, comfortable confinement while we discuss the situation. Hyunju looked around the chamber they stood in. The walls seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously, showing glimpses of starfields that couldn't possibly be visible from the same location. The floor beneath her feet felt solid, yet she could see through it to levels below where other beings moved about their duties. This is impossible, she whispered. Matter cannot behave this way. Your science is based on three-dimensional thinking, Captain Lee said. We learned to work in 11 dimensions during our war with your ancestors. Before she could respond, the space around them shifted. The walls became transparent, revealing the scene outside. Hyunju's 12 warships hung motionless in space, their hulls dark and lifeless. But they were not destroyed. She could see emergency lighting glowing through their viewports, indicating life support was still functional. You disabled our entire fleet without destroying a single ship, she said, her warrior training helping her analyze the tactical situation despite her shock. Violence is wasteful, Captain Lee replied. We prefer more efficient solutions. Around her ships, the human vessels had become fully visible. Now she could see their true size. Each one was easily 3 times larger than her flagship, their hulls incorporating materials that seemed to absorb and redirect light. No obvious weapons were visible, yet they had neutralized the collective's most advanced battle fleet in seconds. How? The question escaped her before she could stop it. Captain Lee gestured, and the space around them filled with holographic displays. Mathematical equations appeared in the air, showing forces and energies that her military education had never covered. Your weapons manipulate matter and energy in conventional ways. Plasma, kinetic projectiles, electromagnetic fields. We learned to manipulate the underlying structure of reality itself. One display showed her fleet's attack in slow motion. She watched her ships fire their most powerful weapons, saw the massive energy discharge that should have vaporized any target. But the human ships had simply stepped sideways through dimensions she couldn't perceive, allowing the attack to pass through empty space. Your shields, she said, studying the displays. They exist in parallel dimensions. Among other places, Captain Lee confirmed. We learned that the best defense against 3-dimensional weapons is not to be in 3 dimensions when they arrive. Another display activated, showing the moment her ships had been disabled. Hyunju watched in fascination as invisible forces reached through her vessel's hulls, selectively shutting down every system that could cause harm while leaving life support and basic functions intact. Gravity manipulation, she breathed. You can control gravitational fields at the quantum level. We can control many things at the quantum level, Captain Lee said. We had to learn quickly during the war. Your empires gave us excellent motivation to advance our understanding of physics. The displays shifted to show star charts spanning centuries. Hyunju saw the progression of human technology from primitive chemical rockets to vessels that could fold space around themselves. The advancement was impossibly rapid. The kind of technological leap that should take millennia had occurred in mere decades. This is why the elders forbade contact, she said, the pieces finally falling into place. You are not the same species that our ancestors encountered. We are exactly the same species, Captain Lee corrected. We simply learned what we were capable of when survival was at stake. Your empires taught us that the universe is far more dangerous than we had imagined. We decided to ensure that lesson would never need to be repeated. The holographic displays faded, leaving them standing in the impossible chamber once again. Captain Lee's expression remained patient, almost kindly, but Hyunju could see something deeper in his eyes, a hardness that spoke of terrible choices made and prices paid. War Princess, he said quietly, would you like to know why your ancestors agreed to respect our borders? Despite herself, despite her training, despite everything she thought she knew about strength and power, Hyunju found herself nodding. The demonstration had shattered her understanding of what was possible. Now she needed to understand what it meant. The space around War Princess Hyunju transformed once again, the walls dissolving to reveal a vast holographic theater. Captain Lee Dongman stood beside her as images began forming in the air around them. Not flat displays, but 3-dimensional scenes that felt real enough to touch. 300 years ago, Captain Lee began, his voice carrying a weight that made her antenna twitch with unease. Humanity took its first steps into galactic space. We were excited to meet other intelligent species. We believed the universe would welcome us as friends. The hologram showed primitive human ships emerging from a blue-green world. They were crude things compared to what she had seen today. Metal boxes with chemical rockets held together by welds and hope. The humans inside wore bulky environmental suits and communicated through basic radio signals. Your ancestors saw opportunity, Captain Lee continued. 3 primitive species had just discovered space travel. Humans were intelligent enough to be useful, but weak enough to control easily. The scene shifted to show the first contact. Hyunju watched Vex-High crystal ships, Thrak battle fleets and luminary energy vessels surrounding the small human exploration craft. She could see the excitement in the human crew's body language as they realized they were not alone in the universe. That excitement did not last long. "The Vex High wanted our mineral-rich worlds," Captain Lee said, as the hologram showed crystal beings cataloging human star systems. "Your people saw us as potential breeding stock for stronger warrior servants. The Luminari viewed our neural patterns as fascinating subjects for experimentation." Yunju's mandibles clicked nervously. She had studied ancient military history, but the official record spoke only of resource acquisition and integration protocols. They never mentioned what those clinical terms actually meant. The holographic scenes began showing the reality. Human colonies burning as Thrak warriors herded survivors into transport ships. Vex High mining operations stripping entire worlds bare while human prisoners labored in the toxic atmosphere. Luminary laboratories where humans were subjected to experiments that left them changed in ways that hurt to look at. "We tried to negotiate," Captain Lee said quietly. "We offered trade agreements, cultural exchanges, peaceful coexistence. Your empires responded by accelerating their expansion into human space." The star map appeared again, showing human territory, shrinking year by year as the three empires carved up their worlds between them. Billions of humans were taken as slaves, their home planets stripped of resources, their colonies transformed into empire outposts. By the end of the first year, Captain Lee continued, humanity was nearly extinct. We had lost 90% of our population and all but 5 of our worlds. Yunju found herself leaning forward despite her discomfort. "But you survived." "We survived because we learned a terrible truth about our species," Captain Lee replied. "Humans are most dangerous when they have nothing left to lose." The hologram shifted to show the human survivors, ragged groups hiding in asteroid fields and abandoned stations. But something had changed in their eyes. The excitement and wonder were gone, replaced by something cold and calculating. "We stopped, trying to negotiate. We stopped hoping for mercy. We began studying our enemies with the same intensity your empires had studied us." The scenes now showed human raiders attacking empire supply lines, capturing technology, taking prisoners for interrogation. But these were not random acts of desperation. They were carefully planned operations designed to acquire specific knowledge. "We learned your languages, your technologies, your tactical doctrines. More importantly, we learned how to improve them." Hyunju watched human engineers taking apart Thrak weapons and rebuilding them with modifications that made them twice as powerful. She saw human scientists studying Vex-High energy manipulation and discovering principles that even the crystal beings didn't understand. Human researchers examined luminary dimensional technology and found ways to push it beyond its original limits. "By the second year of the war, we were matching your fleet's ship for ship," Captain Lee said. "By the third year, we were winning." The star map showed the tide turning. Human fleets, now equipped with advanced technology, began striking deep into Empire space. But these were not the crude metal boxes from the first contact. These were sleek vessels that bent physics around them. "We didn't just copy your technology," Captain Lee explained. "We understood it better than you did. Your plasma weapons became our quantum disruptors. Your energy shields became our reality anchors. Your faster-than-light drives became our dimensional gates." The hologram showed battles that defied comprehension. Human ships phasing through solid matter to attack from inside enemy vessels. Weapons that targeted the quantum foundations of matter itself, causing enemy fleets to simply cease existing. Defensive systems that operated in parallel dimensions, making human vessels effectively untouchable. By the war's end, we were not fighting to survive anymore, Captain Lee said, his voice barely above a whisper. We were fighting to ensure that no species would ever again make the mistake your empires made. The final scenes showed human fleets, positioned at the heart of all 3 empire territories, not occupying them, not destroying them, simply there, a silent reminder of what humans had become capable of when pushed beyond their limits. "We could have taken everything," Captain Lee said as the holograms faded around them. Your homeworlds, your colonies, your entire civilizations. Instead, we made a different choice. Hyunju stared at the empty space where the terrible images had been, finally understanding the magnitude of what she was hearing. The humans had won completely, then chosen mercy over vengeance. Why? She whispered. Captain Lee's expression was sad but determined. Because we remembered who we used to be before the universe taught us what we could become. The holographic theater around War Princess Hyunju shifted one final time, showing the galaxy as it existed at the end of the Great War. Human fleets hung in space above the three Empire homeworlds, crystal spires of the Vexhai, hive cities of the Thrak, and energy fields of the Luminari. The ships were silent, their weapons powered down, but their presence spoke louder than any threat. This was the moment, Captain Lee Dongman said softly. We had won completely. Every major Empire stronghold was within range of our weapons. We could have ended galactic civilization with a single coordinated strike. Hyunju studied the display, her warrior mind calculating the tactical situation. The human positioning was perfect. They had achieved total strategic dominance. No empire could have resisted if humanity had chosen to press their advantage. Your leaders must have been terrified, she said. They were, Captain Lee confirmed. But what happened next surprised everyone, including ourselves. The hologram showed human representatives meeting with Empire leaders on neutral stations. But instead of surrender ceremonies or occupation terms, these were peace negotiations. The humans were offering to withdraw completely from Empire space. We realized something during those final battles, Captain Lee continued. We had become everything we once feared. Our weapons could unmake matter itself. Our ships could exist in dimensions that shouldn't be possible. We had gained the power to reshape reality according to our will. Hyunju watched the negotiations with growing amazement. The humans were giving up their overwhelming advantage, asking for nothing more than recognition of their original borders and a promise to be left alone. The Empire leaders thought it was a trap, Captain Lee said. They couldn't understand why we would choose to limit ourselves when we could have taken everything. Why did you? Hyunju asked. Your species had suffered terribly. You had every right to claim compensation. Captain Lee was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of centuries. Because we remembered what we used to be. Before the war, humans were explorers, dreamers, builders. We reached for the stars because we hoped to find friends among them. The war had turned us into something else entirely. The hologram showed human fleets withdrawing from Empire space, their ships disappearing into the void as if they had never existed. But Hyunju could see the monitoring stations they left behind, invisible to most sensors but clearly visible in the human display. We chose to become guardians instead of conquerors, Captain Lee explained. We would protect our people in our space, but we would not seek to dominate others. The universe had taught us what we were capable of. We decided that knowledge was burden enough. The scene shifted to show the signing of the Galactic Accords. Empire leaders putting their names to documents that declared human space forever, inviolate. Their faces showed relief, fear, and something that might have been respect. Your ancestors understood what they were signing, Captain Lee said. They had seen what happened when empires tried to enslave humanity. They agreed to respect our borders not because they were defeated, but because they were wise enough to learn from their mistakes. The hologram faded, leaving them standing in the strange chamber once again. Hyunju felt the weight of revelation settling on her like a heavy cloak. Everything she had believed about galactic history was wrong. The humans were not protected by ancient treaties. They were protected by the memory of what they could do if those treaties were broken. The younger generation of your empires has forgotten this lesson, Captain Lee continued. They see our peaceful isolation and assume we have grown weak. They believe 3 centuries of quiet means we are no longer capable of war. Are you? Hyunju asked, though she already knew the answer. Captain Lee gestured, and the chamber's walls became transparent again. Beyond them, space was filled with human vessels. not the dozen that had surrounded her fleet, but thousands upon thousands of ships extending in every direction. Each one was larger and more advanced than anything she had seen before. "We never stopped learning," Captain Lee said simply. "While your empires fought each other for territory and resources, we studied the deepest mysteries of existence. We can now manipulate forces that have no names in any galactic language. We can reach across dimensions that exist beyond normal physics. We can do things that would seem like magic to species that think in only 3 dimensions." The vast fleet began to fade from view, disappearing back into whatever impossible space they had emerged from. Within moments, only the original dozen vessels remained visible. "This is what we choose to show the galaxy," Captain Lee said, "a small defensive force protecting our borders. But War Princess, understand this clearly. We could have every empire capital under our control within an hour of deciding to do so. We choose not to because we still remember who we used to be." Hyunju felt a chill that had nothing to do with the chamber's temperature. "And if someone forces you to remember who you became?" Captain Lee's expression grew sad, but determined. "Then the galaxy will learn why our borders are respected. The choice to show mercy was made once 3 centuries ago. It will not be made again." The chamber began to shift around them, preparing to return her to her flagship. But Captain Lee's final words followed her into the transition. "Tell your people, War Princess. Tell them why the border exists. Tell them what happens when empires forget their place. Tell them that humanity's greatest strength is not what we can do. It is what we choose not to do."